Hey, Jodi.
Hi, Amanda. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good, good. Happy afternoon to you in Toronto.
Happy morning to you in Vancouver.
Happy morning. Yes, it's 11
And
a.m. out here in Vancouver
absolutely. And happy morning or afternoon or evening
or evening.
to happy all day long to you guys listening. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, I'm Amanda Tosoff,
And
and
I'm
this
Jodi
is
Proznick, and we are two of three that make up Music Arts Collective, which is an education hub, online education hub. And this
yeah.
is, here we are in 2021, our first live stream of 2021. Pretty exciting.
Yes, absolutely. And we hope everyone had a as great a holiday season as you could. I know it was a weird one this year, but I know we're certainly happy to be back with some really fun events that we're putting on this winter, and of course these live streams. So I'm super stoked to be here today.
Yeah, so make sure you head over to our website, musicartscollective.com, and check out our latest offerings. We have 3 upcoming webinars, and we actually have just confirmed our first online Girls Jazz Day in collaboration with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra School of Music, which will be during spring break. So stay tuned for that announcement. And it was a super unconventional holiday this year. So one of the questions we want to throw out there, if you're watching, you can type in in the messages is, what are you learning right now? I mean, all been through this crazy learning period. So if there's anything you've been working on or you've been diving into, we want to hear from you. We also want to hear where you're from. So type in, I'm tuning in from blah, and I'm working on, maybe you're a musician, you're like, I'm working on practicing my major skills. Or maybe you're like, I'm working on learning how to crochet or gardening or whatever it is, we want to know.
And what are you working on, Jodi?
Oh, well, I'm working on learning how to do online things, webinars, and
Yes.
yeah, and I'm just that's probably the biggest thing. It's just learning about technology right now.
Yes, I
I
think we
bought
all
my new
are.
microphone and our new cameras, and so yeah, we're figuring it out.
Fantastic. Well, me too.
How about you?
Oh, exactly the same thing, doing this. Yeah, so anyway, we're really excited to be here today to chat with a lovely friend and a beautiful musician, Laila Biali. And yeah, before we introduce a little bit more about her and bring her on stage, I want to do what we normally do, Jodi and I, is whenever we have a guest, we always say all the things we love about them. So, Jodi, what do you love about Laila?
Oh my gosh. What don't I love about Laila?
Yeah.
Laila is honestly one of the biggest, brightest, wholehearted, generous, kind, love-filled people I've ever met. I know that's a big, but she truly is. And anytime you watch her play, that's what radiates from her. From the moment I met her, she exudes enthusiasm, creativity, integrity, and just everything you see on stage is the real deal. She just exudes this. She's just a class act in every way, and I know we both feel so blessed not just to call her a collaborator, but also a dear friend. And so we're excited for those of you who don't know her from our worlds. You'll get to meet her today. How about you, Amanda? What would you say about
Well,
Laila?
all the same things. I mean, yeah, she lights up the room, has this incredible energy and enthusiasm. All the same things you basically just said. I don't have to repeat them. But one thing I was gonna add is just a funny story. I don't think I've ever told Laila this, but I remember when I first heard her name, it was back in the early 2000s, and my boyfriend at the time, Morgan Childs, who's a great drummer, had gone to Banff and met her and Tara Davidson, and they did a recording together, and he brought it back and showed me, and I was like, who's this piano player? And I literally quit my job at Starbucks the next day because I was like, I want to play like that, and I want to focus on my studies. And so anyway, so Laila made me quit my job. It's wonderful. So thanks, Laila. Anyway,
She's inspiring for sure.
yes, very
Totally
inspiring.
inspiring.
Very inspiring.
Yay!
So yeah. So if you don't know Laila, we've already talked her up, but she's an amazing pianist, vocalist, songwriter, arranger, and a CBC radio host, so she's very busy. And she's toured the world with people like Sting, Paula Cole, Chris Botti. She's performed at venues across the world, Carnegie Hall, the Beijing National Center for the Performing Arts. I mean, she's been around the world, and she's JUNO nominated and a
JUNO winning.
JUNO winning.
Both.
JUNO winning. I'm so used to saying nominated because that's me. Anyway,
that's us. We're the nominated. We're the bridesmaids.
Yes. So yeah. So she's amazing, and we're so happy to chat with her today. So let's welcome Laila onto the stage.
Yay! Bravo! Yay!
Thanks for being here.
That was so lovely. That was so lovely. Amanda, I have to say, I would kill to play like you these days. So that was really a sweet story and brought me way back. And my sister was actually a barista at Starbucks. So it was sort of a bit of a full circle situation there.
Amazing.
And Jodi, man, I mean, what more can I say about you? I'll never forget sitting with you there at the JUNOs in 2019.
Yeah,
and
so great.
And I'm excited to delve into some of the topics we've earmarked for today, because I have questions for you both as well.
Oh, you're going to do that? No, the radio host. This is where we will all chat, I'm sure. We'll all have stuff to offer for sure. So I just want to start. We always start with this kind of question, just setting the foundation for the journey. And our question to start is just, how did you find music? Like, what were your earliest formative memories, and who were your earliest formative partners in the journey? Yeah.
Great question. So classical music was really my first love. And my mom tells me the story of how I first started to play piano, because I actually have no recollection of it. I was 3.5, and there was a piano in our home. She played casually. It was the family piano. And she says, I climbed up onto the piano and started plunking out the melody to Sesame Street by ear. And that was when they decided to enroll me in music lessons. And my first major source of inspiration was my classical piano teacher, Juanita Ryan. And she was this big Italian lady, and she had this crazy blonde, white hair, kind of like Ursula in The Little Mermaid. And she was this huge personality, and she terrified me, but she also thrilled me. She was so passionate, and she would send me home with stacks of first cassettes, remember those cassette tapes, and then CDs, and like from such a young age, she treated me with so much respect as a young musician. She never made me feel like I was just a child, and she really just imagined that I might someday want to be a concert pianist, which was my dream for many years, and poured into me at that level. So that's where it all started. And then when I was 15, I was in a car accident. And we used to always take trips down to Seattle as a family to do our shopping, from Vancouver down to Seattle. And we were rear-ended on the highway. And wow. I was injured. I had really bad whiplash, my neck, my shoulder, my arm. And that was kind of what seemed to me like the beginning of the end. And that happened to coincide with when I switched from one middle school to a high school, Handsworth Secondary, where Bob Rebliati was the band teacher. And I had met him, and he had started feeding me these jazz CDs, Rini Rosnes, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock. And I didn't immediately take to jazz, but this accident happened, and I was already kind of dipping my toes in the jazz pool. And then before I knew it, I was just using my left hand and learning to speak this new language and to improvise. And there was such a mix of emotions around that for me. And actually, Darcy Gregoire was my first private teacher. And anyway, so, sorry, not Darcy Gregoire, Darcy Argue. Darcy
was your first.
Yes. Darcy Gregoire was my first agent.
I was in honor band with Darcy. We went at McGill together at the same time. So it's like full circle. I remember seeing you and Brandy when you guys were high school students too.
Right.
So that's amazing.
Exactly. And through Mr. Reb at Handsworth, I was thrown into this world of like big band jazz. And, I remember being in the small ensemble, and again, like playing with primarily my left hand. And it was an awkward time, but it was also a very rich time. And so that was sort of the formative years for me in jazz. And then, of course, later went on to go to Humber College for jazz. And that was, the beginning of a career in jazz. That's my answer.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. I love how it starts in those formative years, those early seed planting, and then it's the chain of events of having mentors at very important places along the way. And sometimes the obstacle becomes the path, right?
That's right. That's right.
Constantly like, okay. I've had
totally
beautiful.
And that was actually how I started singing as well, right? When I had this injury and I got a scholarship to go to Humber College. And I remember Brian Lillis, who was the head of the music program at that time, saying to me, because I said, I have this injury. I don't know if you noticed, I was mostly playing with my left hand. And he said, well, we'll take you however we can take you. And so I actually started the program as a singer, which was so bizarre for me because piano really was my first love, Yeah.
Amazing.
That's so cool. I love that story. I mean, I don't love that you were hurt, but I love that it put you on a different path, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So our next question. So you've released numerous CDs under your own name, and you've collaborated obviously with lots of great people. And we want to get into talking about the process of making a record. So let's start with the first step. What do you do first? What's the first decisions you have to make?
Well, it's changed over the years, and I would be interested to hear your answers because you've both created some of the most beautiful recordings in terms of production and concept, from concept to realization that I've ever heard. For me, initially, I think, my first record was with Brandy Disterheft and Sly Uhas, and I called it Introducing the Laila Biali Trio, kind of mimicking introducing the Brad Mehldau Trio, because I love Brad Mehldau. And it was definitely more piano-oriented. And I just wanted to make what I thought would be a wonderful, creative jazz record that represented who I was. And that was very much about the band and the repertoire. But then as the years have passed, fast forward actually to 2008, CBC Records, when they existed, approached me and said, hey, would you mind putting together a group and creating an album that, bridges jazz with other mainstream music? Because that was sort of what CBC was doing as a format. And I think they wanted CBC Records to mirror that. And so I was tasked with putting this band together and choosing songs from the mainstream Canadian repertoire. And that was sort of what put me on the path of being this crossover artist, someone who mixes jazz and pop. But the concept was handed to me by CBC Records, right? And then following that, Tracing Light was just a scramble. I was pregnant. And we were like, let's make a record. Let's put this out before I pop a baby. And when you're a singer and you're getting bigger, I mean, Jodi, you were performing as a bassist.
Yeah.
Like how pregnant were you when you did your last show?
Well, that's a story for another live stream. Actually, we should do one just about that. Well, yeah, 2 days before something, I was up in Pender Harbor. They still talk about it because they put a doctor in the front row of my quartet show with gloves. just in case, because I was sitting on a stool. And I always thought, okay, I'm sorry, I'm diving into my own story, but I always thought, well, I see those old, those pictures of the old bass players who were, robust guys. And well, you can be like bigger and play bass.
Yeah.
But my tummy was rock hard. So it was actually really awkward trying to find a spot even to put the bass. So I had to sit like on a stool. Anyway, 2 days before, we had everything packed up just in case I went into labor in Pender Harbor, but we made it home. But But I think by the time Tristan was like, get me out of here, I've had it. I'm out anyway. But yeah, so
It's amazing.
it's a whole, the pregnancy performing thing is interesting. So
it is.
yeah,
And for me as a singer, I was losing vital capacity. And so we were like, we got to get this girl into the studio to record her vocals. And this is actually a very sweet story. Josh's first kicks happened when I was like the first kicks that I felt in utero from him were when I was recording Tracing Light, tracking the vocals. And that was so beautiful. And I remember getting the ultrasound and then having that experience, and it was just profound. But that record, because it was a scramble, it was really this mishmash of everything I had just been working on as an artist, you know, going into the woodshed and creating arrangements and for live performance. And it was like, well, what are our favorite songs? Let's grab those and we'll record more than we need, and then we'll assemble a record. And George Kohler was producing.
Oh yeah, it's such a great record. All of them.
Thank you. And I remember at the end of that process, George sitting down with me and saying, okay, he brought 3 playlists to the table from the songs that we had recorded. And he said, this is what I would put together if I were in a major label executive, you know, and this is what I would do if I were you, the artist. And then there was some third option, but he was sort of laying out these possible trajectories in terms of even like branding, looking towards the release of the album, never mind the actual recording process. And that has also these days become an integral part of how I conceive of an album now, how I think about one before I even go and record one. Because 10 years ago, I wasn't as geared towards thinking about the business side of things.
Right.
Now I really am at 40, right? Like, how can this be artistically authentic, but still viable?
Yep.
So fast forward to my more recent records, concept is key. And I know that we live in a world where people are consuming music the way they do maybe fast food to some degree, where you sort of cherry pick things and you go onto Spotify and you listen to one track off the record and you assemble your own playlist, or you subscribe to someone else's playlist rather than listening to an album in its entirety. But I can't and won't ever let go of the fantasy that most people, we hope, or some people at least. And if you're one of those people out there, ping us and let us know, because it'll bring us great comfort.
Let us know.
We'll listen to an album from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, ladies, people send me their music all the time, especially as a radio host now. And it takes me forever to listen to stuff. And the reason is I don't listen to a track here, a track there. I have to just listen to the whole thing. And so I'll usually go for a walk or a drive, and I will listen to the project from start to finish, because I've always felt there's an arc to an album. You know, there's an arc to each song, but there's an arc to the whole record. And so I would say, write that way. And I also, when Ben and I now as co-producers assemble the final song list for an album we're going to release, we really think about the whole arc. That's really important. Yeah.
I absolutely 100% agree with everything you're saying.
Me too.
I know Amanda and I are just like, it's like it's a song cycle. I always imagine it as almost like it's an art gallery, and it's like a show. You're putting on presenting your art on the wall, and everything. It's like a story of a moment in time, and you're telling the story of where you're at as an artist, and it all connects to each other. I mean, you can listen to them individually, but for sure, I think we all kind of write that way a little bit.
Yes.
That's something we have in common. And yeah, it feels really weird to write just one song. And in fact, it's hard for me to even do. I know that people do it. I don't know. Maybe we're just attached to those memories of when we used to sit with our records and like listen to the whole thing in the basement of our houses and stuff, and with the, the actual holding the CD or holding the album cover. So
yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
No. That's all I wanted to say.
It's a tactile experience. And I love that that's coming back now with vinyl and liner notes. I haven't yet released a record on vinyl, but because it's so impractical, but at the same time, I'm drawn because it brings back everything that I loved and still love about listening to music, where it's this holistic experience. By the way, I just want to say that I'm seeing this wonderful stream of comments.
I know.
Some are from YouTube and some are from Facebook, and we're seeing them all. Tina, Steve, Paige, Christy, Corey, You know,
Hi, gorgeous friends.
it's
Hi,
just
Lori.
fantastic. And we're seeing these and we can't respond to them all now, but we will. Once we get off this stream, we'll get in there and type some responses. So it's just great to have everybody here. Yeah.
So thanks for that, Laila. I think that's really important for people to know that is your perspective on things. And I want to ask you about collaborators partially because we've both had Laila collaborate with our project, and I've had the great pleasure of playing with you, which is still like highlights of my entire performing life. Being in the middle of you and Ben is like a bass player's dream. Oh my God. It's like so fun. Anyway, so my question for you is, what do you look for in those people you work with? Do you work with the same people all the time? If not, how do you decide to switch it up? And do you write for those people?
Yeah.
Or do you write the song and then find the best fit? Like, how does that work for you?
Oh,
big question, I know, but
such good questions. And I have a few answers because it's not one template. But I would say I have some guiding principles. We're so lucky, COVID notwithstanding, to be able to tour the world and meet people, whether it's at the Banff workshop or when we're on tour and we have to hire players regionally, or if we're part of a jazz festival where you find yourself interfacing with players from across Canada and around the world, sometimes at jam sessions, sometimes when you're doing the sort of the onstage shuffle and one band is getting off stage, the other's getting on stage. And then you get to hear each other too. And I think that, throughout the past 20 plus years, really since I was teaching at Stanford Jazz Workshop at Stanford University in California, that was the first time that I remember being surrounded by a bunch of different musicians from different places, and everybody was so talented. But the thing that struck me about some specific players was that they had a real distinctive voice. So I think especially as someone like Ambrose Akinmusire, I never know how to say his last name. He was like 18.
Wow.
And I was 21 or something, 22. I was really young too. And I remember hearing about this guy and, oh my gosh, he's touring with Greg Osby, and Taylor Eichste is another great example. And it was not only that they were prodigiously talented and so very accomplished, but they had a voice on the instrument. And so from that moment forward, I had the dream of working with Ambrose someday. And it was just sort of like in the recesses of my brain and my imagination. And so then when I was writing the songs for my self-titled record, and especially the song Refugee, I was hearing trumpet, and I didn't write it with Ambrose in mind. In that instance, I had written the song and I was thinking of who we might have guest on it. And then it was just like that strength of voice, that commitment of playing.
Right.
That was the sound. And I didn't think, at this point, he was kind of a big shot. So I had to write to him through his manager, but he remembered me. And that was how that happened. But in terms of the band that I assemble, I will tell you two stories of when I was advised to put together supergroups. And I even had the opportunity to put together supergroups. So when I was in my mid-20s and touring with Paula Cole and Chris Botti, Bobby Colombi was the manager of both Paula and Chris. And we were in LA, and he had me meet Tal Wilkenfeld and Vinny Colaiuta because he wanted me to be in this supergroup, this like fusion contemporary jazz, kind of, I equate it to like what Hiromi's doing or something. And that was what he envisioned for me. And I'm sitting there with two of the best players in the world. I'm a huge Vinny Colaiuta fan. And it's like this dangling carrot, this opportunity. How in the world would you ever say no to something like this, right? But even then, I knew that while I would love to make a record with those two, it wouldn't really be consistent with who I am as an artist. And I was still trying to determine, especially at that point in time, who I was and what my voice was. So I didn't move forward with that. And then later I had the opportunity to potentially make a record with, it's crazy, John Patitucci, Brian Blade. I had some folks who knew them, and I had met them briefly through the New York scene when I was living there. And I remember discussing it with Ben, you know, wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, put out a record with those guys. They're incredible, and they're two players that I hugely admire. But at that point, I had really begun to develop a relationship with George and Larnell, and that band starts to feel like family. And they're such incredible artists in their own right, you know, and especially Larnell is becoming increasingly well known, and he's a bit of a star now himself. But it wasn't about celebrity. It was about what would bring the right character to the music. And I have no doubt that Brian Blade and John Patitucci would hugely elevate the music and my status in jazz. But something about it just felt disingenuous. And maybe someday there'll be a more organic way in which I'll cross paths with those musicians again, and we'll make a record, and it'll be thrilling when and if that happens. But in the meantime, I love what is growing and developing with the people who are in my midst, you know, on an ongoing basis. There's value in that. And I think that it can be felt and heard in the music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hallelujah. Laila. You are it. I hope everyone is listening right now to this, because 100, I could not agree with you more. A couple of things that are standing out to me: that you were following intuition, you were listening to your inner guidance and you know that that love and connection is the root for all of the beautiful music that can be made, and you can't fake that. The love, and oh God, George and Larnell. I mean, come on. Like, they're brilliant. The thing is, it's apples and oranges, really. Like a lot of, like the difference between Larnell and Vinnie Colaiuta. I mean, some people might say that's blasphemous, but really, folks, you know, it's like a beautiful garden, and there's like roses over here and a, you know, like a daffodil here, and like it's all beautiful. And so and so, you know, I think that I almost, like, I'm feeling emotional, because I think that is, you know, it may take longer when you make those choices. It's not going to go, you know, but it's almost like you're, as a collective, you are raising the vibration as you move through. Amanda, I don't know if you feel that same way, Amanda, you know, about your choices. I'm sorry, I just interrupted you, Laila. You wanted to say something?
No, I want to hear what Amanda has to say. Go on.
Well, I was just going to add that, I think for me, when I'm listening to a group, it's not the most flashiest playing that gets me. It's the emotion, and you can really feel that in both of your records, all of your records, Laila and Jodi. I feel that love. You can almost hear the love of the band, and I know that's something that I also really aim for in my own music too. You know, that connection with people, who are all amazing. So I totally agree.
And to answer your question just about, you know, what comes first? Am I thinking of the musicians as I'm writing, or do I write and then assemble the musicians who seem to be the best fit? I think in terms of the core band, I am definitely thinking of the musicians that I'll be writing for. So with Out of Dust, Ben Whitman, my husband, Larnell Lewis, Rich Brown on bass, on electric bass, and that was the core ensemble. And then there's sort of elements of flavoring that come in later, and those that can be changeable. It's not that those people matter less; they certainly don't. But it's been fun, for example, with the color of B3 organ or auxiliary keyboards. You know, I always wanted to work with Sam Yehel, or Yehel, I don't know how to say his last name, since I heard him with Joshua Redman's Elastic Band. And so we got to work with him on on the last record, on the self-titled record. And then we actually brought in Glenn Pacha, who's now in Canada, but was in New York for many years, to kind of fill in some of what Sam had been doing on one track called Got to Love. And as part of that process, we were like, wow, this guy is really good. It was just in a different way. It was a different flavoring. It was no less good, no more good. It was just different. Beautiful. And so we decided to call on Glenn for Out of Dust, you know, because we wanted to see what he would come up with that was different. And it's almost like, I don't know, again, I want to be very careful about the analogies used because, you know, people are so much more than just aspects of a house renovation. But I think of it a little bit as like painting a room, you know, adding the B3 at the end for me would be similar to adding some of those finishing touches that are critically important, but you can kind of play around with what direction you want to go in, right? 100%. Whereas Larnell and George and Ben and Rich, they are the foundation. They're like the bones of the house.
Yeah. And how amazing when your bones are so brilliant. And I'm sure you just trust them implicitly. I mean, you were talking about, like, I got to play Sugar.
Yes.
Billy Rich Brown, I love you. I kept texting him. I'm like, you are so amazing. Because that bass line was a little tricky on upright. But I love that you just said, Rich, just what would you do with this? And he, you know, this is this thing that I really hope people understand about jazz musicians in particular. And it was Phil Dwyer who told me this, which is when you curate well, the music just takes care of itself. So you put the right combination of people and it's almost like being a chef or something, and just knowing the right amount of salt and the right amount of, so there's this, and then the everything just takes care of itself. You don't have to, you know, sometimes you don't have to do very much and they just bring their best self. So it's that balancing act of, right? Of making really mindful choices, but then also allowing what you've chosen to grow and, you know, emerge with the music.
And I think that's so important. I think that's something that we all love, not only in terms of the process of making a record, but also live, where, you know, you want to give people a guide or, you know, a starting place and to some degree a destination, but there's so much room for play. And we've all, I'm sure, been in situations where you had a very prescribed role and it was frightening or daunting because, like, I remember when I was singing with Chris Botti, one of the toughest things was I had to sing songs that he had recorded with Paula Cole, with Sting, with Jill Scott, you know, and I'm trying to sing like these women who I can't sing like. I can't, you know, and I never ascended to the place in that group where I just got to kind of be me. I wasn't confident enough, and I was also a little bit confused about what my role was. I really thought that I was supposed to just try and do my best Paula Cole and do my best Jill Scott, which was impossible, you know? And so when you find yourself as a musician in those situations where your role is super clearly defined by someone else, that's a really tough place to be. And I've only met a handful of people who can really do that. Jo Laurie is one. She's incredibly gifted as a singer in her own right, and she's very distinctive and has her own unique voice, but I call her the Swiss Army knife because she can do anything. Like, ask her to sing like Mariah Carey on All I Want for Christmas and she'll do it. Ask her to sing like Mary J. Blige on Whenever I Say Your Name with Sting, she'll do it, you know.
Wow.
But not many of us can, and I would say that for her, she thrives doing that. That's actually how she studied as a vocalist, was to be somebody who could literally do anything you asked of her. But I think for a lot of us, we've struggled to mine what our unique voice is and what we bring to the table. And so we revel when someone invites us into the fold and says, I just want you to be you. Yeah, just be you. Well, what would you do? You know, and give some guidelines, but then you get to kind of grow into that role.
It's such a beautiful thing. Amanda and I were just chatting about this. Well, we chat a lot now. Every day. Yes. But we were just chatting about how this, I think too, not to get too into the women in music thing, but I think too that this piece of info is really important because, and I've talked about this with a lot of women, like there's a certain lived experience that we have that we can bring to the table, when we're not trying to be something that we can't be. Like, I'm 5'2" with small hands, and I desperately want to sound like Paul Chambers and Ray Brown, but I physically am not them. So I'm going to have to be me doing, or like, you know, I would love to write music like Kenny Wheeler, but I'm not Kenny Wheeler. I'm Jodi, you know? So, you know, you have to be okay with what, and actually in some ways believe that what you have to offer, you can take up space in the world with that, and you can sit in that and be in that, and not judge that. Like, you know, and I know all three of us have moved into this in time, and if there's anything we can kind of call out, shout out to the ethers, to all of you, it's just that, just trust your lived experiences. Your writing is why you're making this art, because as you say, you know, when we try to be what we think other people want us to be, it's actually a really dangerous path to go down as an artist. I think it can be really, because you're never going to feel like you're enough in those spaces. So
totally. And I think, you know, in jazz in particular, but probably any, you know, I mean, learned art form, we start by emulating the masters, and we start by emulating the people we look up to and admire. And there always feels like there's a gap, you know, and it can really take a while to become comfortable with what it is that you have to say and that you bring to the table that is uniquely you. And it can all sound very cliche, but there's power in it.
Yep.
And I think it's a combination of unlocking that from within and having the right combination of friends, peers, partners, and mentors who help unlock that from without.
Yes.
And I think we've all experienced people who along the path have helped facilitate that or have locked us up more. And it's tricky, and everybody's journey is different. But, you know, when we were talking about the people who've influenced us, or I think you guys, you know, when we were having a bit of an offline conversation, and even emailing back and forth, you know, there was just talk of who our huge mentors have been through the years. And when I think of the folks who've really impacted me, you know, my first music teacher, and then Ben has been huge, my husband and main collaborator these days. And a large part of why he's been so significant in my world and in my life is that he has really given me permission to be who I am. And he's even coaxed me out of the shell, you know, in tears, like just crying, unwilling, afraid of stepping out, afraid of the rejection.
Yeah.
And it took him going like, fly, birdie, fly.
Yeah, that's exactly what Tilden said to me. I think, you know what I have to say, I think all three of us, and Amanda's about to get married. So I you know, I haven't met David other than virtually, but knowing his work on your work, that you have collaborated and Ben's work, working with you, and just Tilden has been in my life for 25 years.
Wow.
You know, it is, and this is the curating your life, choosing partners who are your cheerleaders, who will be honest, but also really do want you to fly, and are just there beside you, holding your hand, and are willing to step back and let you fly. You know, that's huge. It reminds me of Kamala Harris and her husband. It's like there's like a new paradigm emerging, and it makes a huge difference. I think, especially when you're parenting, right, Laila?
Oh my gosh,
it's a team.
So just today, for example, and Ben is one of the most talented musicians and producers and engineers I've ever met. Yeah, but he is so humble that today he helped Josh get set up here at the piano for his lesson earlier while I was showering and getting ready for this. He made me lunch. And I was standing in the kitchen just going, I said to him, I'm like, you just do it all. You just do it all. I mean, I could not do what I do without his support. And then he's also so much more than that. He's also really taking the lead on many things. So I know we three ladies are super blessed, and I see it in other partnerships out there, Elizabeth Shepard and Ewan, her husband, and I'm sure White Horse, I mean, that'd be an interesting band to talk to.
Oh, yeah, they're amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Celine Dion and her husband.
Yeah, well, I know, right? They're these super couples, and I think that the whole notion of collaboration, I mean, beyond the, who you choose to live with and create with, that's something that's been so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Amanda and I are doing this together. It's that when you find those kindred spirits where you're like, we're just cheering each other on and we're there for each other. That is golden. That is just, and the more people that find each other, like all of us cheering each other on. I mean, there's just no doubt we're all like, go, just yay. And you feel that. And I think that's how we're going to raise the planet, right? We are just we find each other and we're like love warriors, arm in arm. Let's just move each other forward and cheer each other on as we move into this new space and place that we're moving towards of, creativity and imagination and kindness and generosity of spirit and all that good juicy stuff that is going to help things along. Anyway, look at me getting all.
Oh, amen.
So
Amen. And Jodi, I mean, per what you just said, I feel like the very best of social media. I know a lot of people think of social media as kind of a fake community, like it's not a real community. It's a substitute for, sort of a poor substitute for the real thing. But I'll tell you, what I love best about social media is I actually think there's real bona fide community there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a bona fide linking of arms and cheering one another on. Mm-hmm. And everything you just described can happen, obviously, and should happen within the context of your closest relationship, a marriage or a partnership, or a family, a nuclear family. But then there's this wonderful space that we all have access to. Yep. And I think that we can experience what you just described there. And that is the very best of social media. And I experience every day there every day. And I even go there to experience that, to contribute and to receive. And it's pretty awesome. I mean, here we are, this is happening on social media, right? In a way.
Amanda and I mean, our whole plan here with Music Arts grew out of internet access, and we've done everything online, all of our meetings, all of our collaborative, it's kind of amazing, really. So especially I think for me too, the fact that there are, the amount of women in particular that are in our field is still on the lower side, although it's changing. And that's really exciting. And of course, Terry Lynn Carrington and a lot of these great leaders are just like, nope, let's move it forward, Renee. And it's like Christine, they're amazing. And they're just like Christine Jensen. They're just like, nope, we're going to arm in arm. Let's do some projects. Let's make some stuff happen. But I know for me, just being able to connect with friends across the country or around the world that are doing the same kind of stuff I am, it's been very empowering for me to have this opportunity. So that's what I think online worlds can do. I totally agree. I know you have places to go and things to do. So maybe Amanda, we should skip to the speed round. What do you think?
Yes. This was beautiful. I had goosebumps like multiple times during your guys' back and forth. That was just so inspiring and beautiful. But yes, let's do the speed round. Are you ready, Laila?
I am.
Should I start? Okay.
Yeah, you do them because I've talked a lot.
I love it. I like to listen. Okay. Which player or musician from history do you wish you could have watched live?
Aretha Franklin.
Oh, yes. Okay, they say that there are usually around 3 people in a person's life who light a spark around a passion. Sometimes it's a family member, or maybe a teacher, mentor, or friend. Who is one of those people for you?
Ben Whitman.
Oh, yes. Okay, what's your favorite time of day to get creative?
I'm going to say dusk. I think as things begin to quiet in the world around us and we're like prepping dinner and everyone is, I don't know, it's something about that space feels a little like it's leaning towards meditative. There's still some activity. There's still a little bit of light, but things are winding down, and I think I enter that, like the alpha waves start to, circulate in my brain, and I think that's conducive to creativity. So yeah.
Amazing. So what is your favorite venue to play in?
I have so many that I love, but I am going to shout out Kerner Hall because it's this stunning hall, but it feels intimate. And you have people not only in front of you, like on one side, they're on the other side as well. You're actually surrounded because of the way the hall has been designed. And that's so, so fun. So you can be looking at your band and then look to the left and see people, look to the right and see people. And the acoustics are extraordinary. And Mervon, who kind of runs things there and curates what's happening at Kerner Hall, I really love him as a person. So that's part of that answer as well.
Amazing.
And the last question, I think we got into a little bit, but how old were you when you decided that music was the path? Like officially, we're like, I'm doing this.
It happened twice. So probably when I was 12, like before the accident was when I was 15. So when I was 12, I definitely wanted to be a concert pianist. That was the path I believed I was on. And then that dream was dashed and I shifted to science. I actually got a scholarship to go to UBC for sciences and I wasn't going to do music. So Humber for jazz was this total left turn. But I kind of renewed my vows when I was about 18 or 19 and at Humber College and really delving into jazz as an art form and finding my voice. And that was when I recommitted to a path in music.
Amazing. And perhaps the very last question we can ask is, do you have something upcoming? Or anything you want to tell the audience about?
Yeah, a couple of things. So we recorded and released Out of Dust early pandemic, March 27th of last year. And I know everybody's been digging into these digital originals and digital content. And I was able to, with the support of Canada Council, Factor, and Imago, record some videos, acoustic performances at a safe distance and all that stuff in November. And so we'll be rolling those out. We released the first one, Wendy's song, on Wendy's birthday. That was earlier this month. And there'll be a few of those coming out in the coming weeks. And then I'm already dreaming of my next record. I did something kind of fun online on Twitter and Facebook where I said, what do you people want to hear? What do folks want to hear for my next release? And I had these two polar opposite projects. I had a duo project with Ben, which is this sort of organic concept to emerge from being locked down together for months on end. And then something, that to me represents coming back, the arts and larger ensembles, becoming a thing again. And that's to record with a symphony orchestra. So I asked people what they wanted to hear and it was directly split down the middle. But most said both, do both. So believe it or not, I'm maybe going to try to do both. And that's
be amazing.
Going to be a huge undertaking. And I know we talked a lot about, the sort of concept and recording side of an album, but I do want to say that especially for us as Canadians, procuring funding and, it's huge when we actually start to make the record and then move towards releasing it. So again, we're so grateful for the access to funding that we have here. And I want to encourage people, the folks who are tuned in today, whether you're in Canada or elsewhere, I am seeing a lot of people forge a way forward on the funding side through Patreon and Kickstarter and GoFundMe. And, the audiences are there. They want to invest in the arts, probably in some ways now more than ever. So don't be shy to look at creative funding models because they're necessary, even though they can be daunting, they're necessary. So, yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Yes, we are in a real interesting time, the music business is. And though I know you both are too, I am so optimistic because sometimes out of adversity comes opportunity and reimagining. And Canada Council, yes.
Oh,
So
oh.
those who are new to or maybe they want to make their first album, there's Factor, there's Canada Council.
Yes.
All of the provinces have their own arts councils.
Yep.
Here in BC, we have
Cities.
Creative BC.
Yep.
And then yes, those crowdsourcing opportunities through Patreon and GoFundMe. You have if you have a community that wants to support you. At this point, you have nothing to lose and a lot to gain and there's something wrong in saying, and it's also, again, walking onto the stage and saying, I am here, I make art, I believe in what I'm doing, and I'm going to take up space in the world, and universe, support me. And 9 times out of 10, as we've discovered, the universe says, yes. And you're like, oh, we've all been supported by Factor and Canada Council over the years. So go for it. Go for it. Make your art.
Totally. And I even want to say, I know this is probably in some ways the least likely scenario for people, but don't be shy to even look at direct patronage. That's how Mozart did it. Yeah. That's how Taylor Swift does it. I mean, she's wildly famous. Sting, when he made his musical, he had patrons, he had investors. And I know we often think, well, that's for people like that. But no, you'd be surprised at how many folks are out there who have been very successful and they're looking for a place to give that feels meaningful to them. And you may be the answer to that desire for them. So in many ways, it's a beautiful reciprocal relationship, not just one way, contrary to how we may think of it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Art is going to get us through, and has over the years, everything. Political speeches are great and scientific papers are fantastic. There's nothing like a beautiful story, and especially through music, but through any type of artistic medium. I always say my quote, I put it up on Instagram. You guys should follow us all on Instagram and on social media. Go follow us. But art is an invitation, not a dictation. And I honestly believe we are all kind of love warriors out there, creating higher vibrational activities to invite people back into their humanity. I honestly believe that.
Yes.
So, yes.
Amen. And everybody is an artist.
Everyone.
Maybe not doing it by vocation, but everyone out there has something, some means by which they understand the world and express themselves within the world that is artistic.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to me that you ladies are a part of helping unearth that in folks who may otherwise not think of them as artists, And so thank you for that work that you're doing. And I want to just quickly give a shout out to Amanda and her new record, Earth Voices, which drops this week. There have been 2 singles. I am so fortunate to have sung on one. But I have listened. I was given a sneak listen to the whole album. It is some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. And I can say that totally honestly. I played it for Ben yesterday and he had the same reaction. So get ready, world. Go and pre-save her album now on her artist page. And
Speaking of love, so much love in every note, in every performance. Kelly Jefferson and John Maharaj and Emily Claire and Lila. Amanda has a huge, gorgeous heart to gentle soul with so much beauty that just pours out of her. And so it's like a magnet. All the cool, awesome, beautiful people just, including her beautiful future husband. So go download her album. Yay. Go download her album.
Well,
awesome.
Thanks for the shout out. And thanks for being part of it, Laila, because it was just absolutely beautiful. It's so perfect, exactly how I imagined the piece to go. So thank you for being part of it.
Well, I was terrified walking in, and that was one of those environments again where you and it's David, right? The 2 of you just set me at ease, and it took a few goes for me to just settle into my body and settle into the music, which I loved immediately. But, and found that switch, the permission to be me switch, where I could feel you guys working with my strengths rather than trying to help me rise above my weaknesses. And that felt very different.
What weaknesses? What are you talking
Yeah, I know,
about?
right?
Oh, they're everywhere.
When we were making Sun songs, we were tuning to you.
Oh,
Dave Sekula can attest to that. We were like, oh, wow, zero. Like just you would sing a note and it would be just like unbelievable. Love you. And the humility, because it was the same thing with my recording. You're like, is it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Anyway, Laila is a gift to the world.
And thanks to you ladies, and thanks to everybody out there. We will, as I said, I'm going to go through the YouTube and Facebook playbacks and just thank you for all your beautiful comments, and keep supporting Jodi and Amanda. You guys do this series. It's on an ongoing basis, right? So
every
keep your eyes peeled.
Every Sunday live stream and
Right.
Absolutely. Awesome. And also I'm going to post Wendy's song. We were going to share it, but we had some technical difficulties. So I'm going to post that right now and go check it out. It's so beautiful and so heartfelt. So
yeah, Wendy. I can't play that song with you, Laila, without I'm like holding back the tears every time we perform it. I'm like thinking about baseball. I don't want to just brag to be like, oh, the bass player is hyperventilating.
And then you have a mask, right? You've got a mask on top of it all. It's
gross.
Well, thanks again to everybody, and thanks to you ladies. Have a beautiful Sunday, and
you too.
Keep going out there and making amazing art.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank
you very much.
Take good care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.